Hello, if you're watching, why don't you type a comment and say, hello, good to see you.
Hello.
Yes, Speak Life is now live. Fantastic.
Excellent. This is our first one in how many weeks
Months.
have we been?
I don't know.
It feels like a long time. I've
Yeah.
only been in the office for weeks because we've been in London and then you've been away, and so I've worked from home. So
I've been in Denmark, kind of in and out of consciousness.
Near death.
Near death, wheeled onto a stage in front of 1,000 Danish students.
Yeah.
And then collapse back into a heap.
Yeah, man.
Sleep for 23 hours and then...
Tell people what it was you were doing in Denmark. Cause
I have no idea.
I don't remember any of it.
My minder just kind of threw me onto a stage and I kind of gave a talk and then kind of went back to bed for 23 hours and got up again. I had this horrible kind of cold and sore throat, and now I've got penicillin for it, which is nice. Yeah, that's proper.
Was it just a flu?
Horrible kind of cold. Oh, here we go.
Glen, stop.
So yeah, it was. I don't know.
Was it flu or the man flu?
Dreaded. It was dreaded man flu.
Not just man flu.
Not just any
the one.
flu.
It was that one.
Man flu.
It did sound pretty bad, actually, given your messages on WhatsApp. I got the impression it was pretty bleak. So yeah, so that's why we weren't doing a live cast last week, and then the week before that. Were you in London the week before in a city mission or something? London
yeah.
City Mission?
So we were doing an outreach to the Canary Wharf. So that's a weird place. It's like somewhere. It's like Hong Kong or Singapore or like some huge financial district in Southeast Asia. Just
whacked there.
Just kind of landing
on the edge of the docks.
On the edge of the docks. And got to speak to people from KPMG and Barclays Bank.
They make good nuts, don't they, those guys?
I think that's KP.
Ah.
Yeah. But yeah, Barclays Bank put on more Christian events like every week than my church does. Literally, like every day. Every day they've got something.
Define Christian event.
Oh, literally, like they'll have a prayer meeting on the Monday, and they'll have a worship meeting on the Tuesday. They'll have a Bible study on the Wednesday. They'll have like some kind of talk on the Thursday. They'll have testimony day on the Friday.
Man,
and
this is run by Christians in the bank, I assume.
It's run by Christians in the bank, but it's paid for by Barclays Bank, and they've got this big motto.
Don't let people know that. Barclays are bankrolling.
Wow, some really nice canapes we had as well. It was
the prosecco.
The prosecco was like these bankers. Yeah,
they know how to live.
Yeah. They haven't been entirely chastened since 2008. Let's just say that. And they've got this motto: "Bring your whole self to work." And so they are active in supporting different faith groups and all kinds of people to continue on, the living out of their fully fledged identities, including their Christian identity. And so they throw money at the Christian group. And like I say, the Christian group puts on more Christian activities in a week than my church does, than probably any church does. So one of the events that we ran for them was I was interviewing a guy called Jeremy Marshall, who's been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he was the head of C. Hoare Bank, which is like one of the oldest private banks in the world. Yep. And he was a big city high flyer, but now he's talking about what's really important in life. And we did
he become a Christian? Or was he a Christian?
He
prior
was a Christian
to
prior to
illness,
that.
or?
Yeah, a Christian and a banker. Wow. Yeah.
How to think those two things exist?
Well, this is the
Christian
line
politicians and all these things.
I know.
All these oxymorons.
Christian bakers. If you can put them together, then God bless you. So yeah, I had. So we had all sorts of events in the city of London, in Canary Wharf, and we were reaching out to people there. That was 2 weeks ago.
And you get a good crowd come in?
Yeah, so like they're all sort of internal events. So KPMG ran their thing, and Barclays Bank ran their thing, and the Financial Services Authority and the Ombudsman, and they're all putting on these different events. And yeah, you get 70, 80 coming along to these events and speaking about Jesus. So yeah, that was good fun. Wow. And also this Easter we've churned out the videos. So we've got 12 videos in a playlist. So if you want to go down below in the comments, you'll see one of our playlists there has got all the different videos that we've released.
Yeah, I've tried to get all of them on there. Hopefully all of them are in there. If you think there's some missing, let me know. But they should be on the YouTube playlist as well. That's much easier to update than the Facebook one. Yes. Facebook hasn't quite nailed the video side of things just yet.
And audio on their video, not brilliant, but a little way to go. Facebook, room for improvement.
Yeah, if you're listening in, Mark.
Yeah, come on, Mark. So we launched all those videos, and I actually had a really lovely message on Easter Saturday from Linda Tannis in the States, and she was talking about some of our Easter resources from last year, because she said, I just had to tell you that last Easter we gave Easter baskets with a copy of Love Story in them to all our cul-de-sac neighbours. So Love Story was our Easter book from last year. She said, today I received a card from one thanking us for the gift of this book last year and saying that he had read it several times, and it's made a big difference for him, allowing him to be reacquainted with Jesus and leading him to become a member of a local church. She then said, one of our other neighbours became a Christian this year and is now part of a Bible study with me, and also I got to use the 321 gospel presentation with a woman who had terminal cancer. Before her death, she received Jesus and was urging the hospital staff and her family to know him too.
Great.
So that's encouraging, you know. You scatter the seed.
It's good to hear stuff like that, isn't it? Because I guess sometimes you put stuff out there and you see it on Facebook and it gets, people watch something or they make some comments and there's some shares, but sometimes you just wonder, like, has this made any difference really? Like, you know, and you just don't know, do you? And obviously you don't do it for that reason to know that these things have happened, but it is an encouragement, isn't it, to know that you're not just shouting at into an empty space,
shouting into the void,
exactly. That stuff actually does make a difference. Yeah, so it is good to hear those things, and positive stories there, isn't it? So,
yeah, totally. Like, thousands of Divine Comedy books going out this Easter, so we pray for them and for their fruitfulness. I guess it's a seed scattering thing, and then you pray to God that He makes it fruitful. But it's nice when you hear that He has made it fruitful.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the other things I was up to just before Easter was recording an Unbelievable podcast with Justin Brierley. So you might know the Unbelievable podcast on Premier Christian Radio. He gets Christians and non-Christians talking together every week. And I was talking to Michael Collette, who's actually from Australia as well, and he's an atheist. And we were debating really my book, Divine Comedy. Is death a tragedy for atheists? Is resurrection wishful thinking for Christians? And I had no idea that this was the case, but I went online this morning to see that there are 224 comments under this particular episode of Unbelievable. So search for it where you get your podcasts, or have a look in the LIVEcast comments on Facebook, and you'll see a link to that program. And we got into some interesting stuff, I think. I think Michael Collette was a little bit taken aback when I said that life without resurrection is tragic. I think he thought that I was like making a moral judgment of the person living that story, and I was hopefully saying, look, Hamlet is a tragedy, and it's full of all sorts of wonderful adventure and noble suffering and sacrifice and wonderful truths along the way, but it does end with everybody dead, right? So that if that is the story of the world, then life is a tragedy, and I think if you just stick within that kind of literary definition of a tragedy, I think it's unanswerable. I think life without Jesus is a tragedy. Only Easter gives you the comedy.
Yeah. So
have a listen to the Unbelievable podcast and see what you make of that. So that's what's new at Speak Life at the moment, and let's have a think about what's news. I think top of the news stories all over the UK anyway are stories about Jeremy Corbyn. What's Jeremy Corbyn been up to, Paul? Can you explain?
I mean, so much stuff going on, isn't there? So, there's these big claims of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and whether that's not been sufficiently addressed. I think it emerged that there were something like 70 allegations that had just been left to kind of fester and not been followed up on. But then the thing that's really come out, I think, was it today? Was it this morning or was it yesterday?
I think it happened last night, yeah.
Yeah, so Corbyn has gone and he has spent time at with a group of Jews, I think called Judas group.
Yes.
Yeah, Judas.
Which puts you under the fact they might be quite a provocative group. So they might be trying to provoke a reaction.
You never know.
Judas, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's coming for a lot of flack for going and associating with this Jewish group, who, at least from what I'm seeing written online, are known as being kind of a bit more far left and anti. They're not as in line with the mainstream Judaism as some would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's all kind of come up, and it's like, well, has Jeremy Corbyn stoked the fires?
Right. When he should be putting them out.
Yeah. Is it a deliberately provocative thing? Is he actually anti-Semitic? And and that's why he's hanging out with these guys who are Jews. I don't know.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, isn't it?
I said the irony to me, at least, seemed that, you know, I mean, my view on what's going on, obviously, I don't know all the ins and outs, is that I doubt Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic. This move seems a slightly strange one and probably slightly ill-judged.
Impolitic. Yep.
Yeah, and probably not at the best time and whatnot. But, you know, it just seems a bit ironic for people to say, look, you know, you got this anti-Semitism problem, and he says, well, I just gone and hung out with these Jewish guys, and they go, oh, yeah, but those aren't the right kind of Jews.
Not those Jews. Not those Jews.
No, not those Jews. The other Jews. These are the Jews we want you to hang out with. You know? And it's like, oh, come on, like, you've got to... Yeah. I mean, where do you draw the line on these things?
Yeah. But it has put me in mind of this issue about anti-Semitism. David Baddiel wrote this excellent article in the Times over the weekend, kind of putting things in context. And one of the things he said, which I thought was very important, is that he got us away from the title anti-Semitism and says, well, let's call it what it is, anti-Jewish racism. And I thought that's interesting because Semitism, it sounds like you know, you've got a problem with a language group, or, you know, I don't like the language group of Middle Eastern languages. No, it's anti-Jewish racism. But then David Baddiel says, okay, but isn't it, it's the strangest form of racism. Can you think of another form of racism where you say, this group of people are the worst and they're at the top of the pile, right? You know, they are, you know, as the Nazis would have said, they're vermin and all that kind of stuff. But they're also pulling the strings, and they're also the power players in this world. And you've got this sort of conspiracy theory that they're actually in charge of the world, and they're the worst. And actually, when he said that, I thought, yeah, that's interesting. I can't think of another group where there is this hated, despised minority, and they are said to be, you know, the very powerful ones at the same time. And I think with the Jewish race, you've got this very interesting, you know, kind of example of a people group who do, you know, punch above their weight in all kinds of areas. You know, I read a statistic just this morning, you know, less than 2.2% of the world is Jewish, and yet 22% of Nobel Prize winners are Jews, 41% of Nobel laureates in economics are Jewish, 11% of the world's billionaires are Jewish, 20% of the world's richest 50 people are Jewish. And that's amazing. And, you know, in the hands of some kind of anti-Semite conspiracy theorist.
Exactly. That's the word that comes to my mind there. Right. It's the conspiracy.
They're pulling the strings. But is there a rational explanation? Is there a rational non-racist explanation for that? And I think the Bible gives you a rational non-racist explanation for that. There is such a thing as God's special people, right? Now, according to the spirits, we are grafted into Christ and we are the true Israel and we are God's people. According to the flesh, yeah, there is such a thing as ethnic Israel. Sure. And God has protected this thing called ethnic Israel down through millennia. And, you know, I don't know any Moabites, and I don't know any Hittites, and I don't know any Girgashites.
My Philistine next-door neighbour.
Yeah. I call people Philistines all the time.
But there's something else.
That's something else. Like, isn't it astonishing that God has preserved an ethnic people called the Jews, and they are only 0.2% of the world population, and they're incredibly, like, you know, successful in 1,000 different areas, and they're incredibly persecuted in 1,000 different ways. Yeah, aren't they a special people? And I just wonder whether the Bible gives you the goggles to have a look at this situation without resorting to the anti-Semitic stereotypes. Like, how do we even make sense of anti-Semitism unless there is this special people group, you know, that have uniquely suffered and are uniquely successful?
Yeah, it's strange to see like where this comes from. And I was saying to you earlier that, you know, I find anti-Semitism it's bizarre to me. I said I wasn't even really aware of it, I don't think, until I was maybe a young adult. And you start to pick up, you see it in like, it was probably picked up a bit more through like films and TV. You know, there's references to the Jews, you know, oh, he's a Jew, and you know, in some kind of film or whatever. But to me, I just never grew up in any kind of culture where people weren't even really talking about Judaism and Jews.
Yeah. Which is not to deny that anti-Semitism
no, not at all. It was just,
played a role, but
to me, it's such a strange thing. I mean, I was
Yeah.
very, aware, of course, of racism across all kinds of other groups.
Yes.
And you would hear things and people might say things, but I just never came across it. It seemed,
Yeah.
it's so...
Yeah.
And then and like you say, then when you do come across it, it's not just like this small... It's not like it's a very niche thing.
Right.
It seems very widespread all across the
Right.
world. Lots of different cultures
Right.
seem to rally against the Jews.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very much the Jews who are terrible, but also running everything, like you say.
Right, right.
It is a bizarre thing.
And scapegoated for the problems of a society. So if your country is tanking and going down the tubes, who are you going to blame? And they have for millennia been very since Pharaoh's days, right? Well, what are we going to do with all these Jews? And genocide becomes the solution. Way back in Exodus chapter 1. So how do we even make sense of this? And I think the Bible gives us some categories for thinking about it. So, okay. So what else is in the news? You were looking at an article on BBC News earlier, Paul. What was that one?
Yeah. So often when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do or one of the things I do over breakfast is get out my phone and look at the BBC News and read through the most read articles, see what's going on. And one that kind of it didn't particularly catch my eye when I saw it. It was more when I was reading through it. But there was an article called "The Mothers Who Regret Having Children." It was all about, I think it was 3 mothers. I think they changed the names, who basically, as it says, regretted having their children, and even though their children were, sometimes slightly older and whatnot.
And these children were not like special needs. They didn't have any particular.
There's nothing in the
disabilities.
Stories. No, there's nothing mentioned in the stories.
No.
It just says that seemingly they were, they just had kids and.
Yeah. Sometimes they cried, or
they were
sometimes
perfectly
they had
healthy,
needs.
normal kind of children in that way. But a few sentences kind of leapt out at me because as I read them, I thought, "Wow, that is so." Regardless of their situation, I think that is so kind of the opposite end of the scale to the gospel. It's such a different outlook on life.
Right.
And I mean, the one particularly that leapt out was this lady said, and she, in reference to the way your life changes when you have children, she said, but life shouldn't be about giving up your life, your freedom, so they can have a life.
Wow.
And that just really struck me, like this sense of, can you think that as a Christian, that's what the gospel is, isn't it? It's giving up your life so that others can have life.
It's what Jesus did for us. It's what we're meant to do for others.
Jesus, that's it. Yeah. Got the link.
But yeah.
But and so I just read that and I thought, wow, what? I mean, I don't think as I read, I was very I want to be wary as we talk about this because one of the ladies said people don't talk about this for fear of being judged.
Right.
And of course, we all feel, if you've got kids, if you've got a daughter, I've got 2 girls. I'm sure people watching have got kids. Some people, of course, having children is hard work,
right.
And it does mean.
Yeah.
Giving up certain things.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It is a sacrifice having kids in many ways. Your time is no longer your own.
Yeah.
It costs you emotionally and financially and pretty much in every way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are, of course, days when you just think this is such hard work.
Right.
Like, do you remember when it, do you remember when you didn't have children?
We went to the cinema.
Do you remember that? Those kind of things. Do you remember when we just used to go out for dinner, that kind of stuff, and whatnot. Yeah. And of course, life changes and stuff. But I don't think I've ever hit the point where I'd say, I just wish we'd never had them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That seems like another step on down the line.
Yeah.
There.
It totally is. And life should not be about giving up your life, your freedom, so that they can have a life. It couldn't be more antithetical to the gospel,
And we said, didn't we, that you could understand that mentality somewhat if people were saying, I shouldn't have to sacrifice for this group of people over here who I don't know.
Right.
I don't know them. They don't like me. They've treated me badly. We talked about the Good Samaritan. You could understand in the Good Samaritan story at least a bit. You can understand why people might go, it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
I don't have to sacrifice for this person.
Right.
But this is your children.
These are your kids.
Your own children. But I don't know how. I don't know how I feel about it. Part of me may, as I read that, I think.
Yeah. It's hard. And you want to have sympathy.
Yeah, you
for
want to
mothers who find it hard, and they don't. And maybe they're expecting to feel a rush of maternal instinct and love that just sweeps them up into warm, gooey feelings.
Was it you who was saying earlier on? What was it? Another article about a lady who said she'd written in.
Yeah.
She said one day my son's going to read this.
I wish I'd never had him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's a thing now. Like wrongful birth is now a thing, and lots of lawyers are getting rich off it in the States, where you have, as your pregnant woman, you're screened to see if your child is going to carry any kind of disease, and the idea is if the child does indeed have a disease, you would abort the child, and then one or two children with illnesses slip through the cracks of the net, and they get born, and then the parents are then suing the medical facilities for not picking up this disease, because if they had picked up the disease, they would have killed the child in the womb, and it's called wrongful birth, and this is now a thing. And there was this woman writing about it in the Times a month or two ago, and she was saying, look, I know this will be hard for my child when they grow up and they search their name online, and they will find this article and they will discover that I did not want them. And I do love them. I love them, but I just wish they were never born. Because life should not be about sacrifice, and the child is going to be in pain, and it's going to be, hugely sacrificial for the family to then deal with a child with additional needs and all that sort of stuff. And so life is not worth it. Life should be about just living for yourself, right? Life should just be a pain-free operation.
And isn't that what everything? That's what everything around us says, isn't it? Right. Your kind of worldviews, your adverts on the telly, and
totally,
it's all about you and yourself and fulfilling yourself and finding the thing that will satisfy you, and put yourself first and whatnot.
Yeah,
and then I suppose, and then we read articles like this or that one, and we're surprised.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And well, should we be surprised if we're sending all these messages that saying no, life is about you, and
absolutely, and if people are holding you back, like how many Facebook memes have you read? If someone's holding you back, you should just cut them loose. And so, like a mother who's been soaking in this for a generation,
you're holding daddy back.
You're a leech. You're a leech, Ruby.
Man, I mean, it's. Yeah, and this is not, of course, to downplay. We don't want to downplay that it's difficult having children.
Of course it is.
It's just...
Life is pain, though, people. Life is pain.
Man, we know, but...
Get the memo. Get the memo. Because what was fascinating to me about this BBC article, because I was just thinking, you know what? Like, even from a Darwinian perspective, like a purely Darwinist, forget Jesus for a minute, a pure Darwinist would just say, well, of course you make a sacrifice for your progeny, your offspring, you're invested in them, they are the future, of course you make sacrifices. Like every culture on earth says, of course, the good life is you sacrifice now for the sake of the next generation. Every single culture on earth, we couldn't have gotten here.
Yeah.
Literally, we couldn't have gotten here if we had any other view. And now all of a sudden we've been soaking in this story that it's all about me. That now we can't even like obey basic biological reality anymore. And anyway, but I mean, one of the things that made me think about this was I guess it was 2 Fridays ago when there was the terrorist attack near Carcassonne in the south of France, and the gunman ended up taking hostage a number of people, and then the French policeman Arnaud Beltrame. My
French is... I've never did French, so I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it.
That's not just me sneezing. Arnaud Beltrame, I think, is his name, and he volunteered to be a hostage, and what a gift for Good Friday preachers, because here is a man literally giving himself as a ransom for somebody else, and can you imagine the scene as he walks into the supermarket and the woman is being released from the supermarket? I wonder if they kind of exchanged glances as they passed one another, because she knew that he was going in to take her place, and the chances of him coming out alive were virtually zero. And so here is this man who is giving up his life for the sake of another. It's the most Christ-like thing you could imagine. And I remember when I first heard that story, just thinking, where do you find a Frenchman who's going to do that when a very secular French society is not telling them that story? They're not, the French say, not that the French are any less selfish or more selfish than anybody else. I'm not sure I would give up my life the way that Arnaud did in those circumstances. But where are you going to find a culture that's going to immerse you in the right kind of story that's going to create the right kind of hero. Because if it's all about me and just living this absurd blip of time before my inevitable extinction, why on earth would I give up this little blip of life for the sake of somebody else? And then I discover that actually he is a serious devout Catholic. He came back to his childhood faith in his 30s, and he had been soaking in the right story. He had been shaped by the true hero of heroes who had given his life as a ransom for many. And this is the reason why he was able to do what he had done. But it just makes you think, well, are we going to be able to produce heroes in the future? You know, if even parents are saying, oh, it's a bit hard though, you know, if even parents with their own children who they say they love are starting to say, yeah, but it's a sacrifice, you know?
Yeah.
What hope society? I'm sounding like Peter Hitchens now or something, some kind of grumbling Mail on Sunday columnist, but what hope society when we can't even sacrifice for our kids? Know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's essentially it's that thing. What would you do for your children?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I preached the other week, and I did use that film about the bridge and the thing, but I was very. So if you've not, let's give some clarity here.
Okay.
So I talked
Zoom
about
back.
Yeah. I talked about I was going to preach an Easter preach at 2 services, and I was using a clip from a film called The Bridge. I think it's called Most. That's the word in Czech. It's a Czech film, and the word most means the bridge, I think. Let me know.
Right.
But basically, it's a father who works at a bridge with a railway bridge, over it, and there's a river underneath, and it goes up and down to let boats through and whatnot. And he's got his young son with him at the bridge, and one day the train comes early, and the bridge is up, and the son falls down into the gears to when he's trying to set the bridge back down, and the father has this kind of decision as to, do I pull the handle and put the bridge down and save everyone, or do I therefore kill his son who's in the machinery, or does he let his child live and all these people go to their deaths? And I used it as a image of the thing. I was very careful to specify, there is a difference between this and the gospel, that of course Jesus says, no one takes my life from me.
Right.
I lay it down on my own accord.
It's a voluntary
thing. So I said there's a limit to this there, and I was very keen to clarify that. But the thing I said, and I had a few people come and talk to me about it afterwards, was I said, put yourself in that situation as a parent, your child, all these people. I said, what would you do? And I said, I thought about it, and the reality is I would send all of those people to their deaths every time. Right. I said, even if I knew that those people on the train were Nobel Prize winners, that someone had a cure for cancer. Right. I said, I would just, not for the sake of my child. And I said, and if I knew they were all selfish, enslaved stuff-ups, which is my kind of gospel setup in the first place, like I am, then I wouldn't hesitate if I knew they were all these terrible people. And I kind of went on to say, of course, God did know exactly what we were like, and yet he still sent his son, and Christ still voluntarily gave himself. But people were saying, like, a few people came up and said, oh yeah, they said it's absolutely true. Like, if it was my child, there's no way I would do it. You put yourself a bit on a limb there. You're expecting, you don't know whether the church is going to turn around and go, what an awful human being. Right. Like, No. But there's that, there's that paternal, or parental, for mothers, maternal, parental thing, which is a strong thing. So it seems really strange, the link from what we're talking about. It feels strange to read an article where people would say, you could get to a point where you would just say, oh, I'd rather the train went. Yeah. I'd rather my kid was gone so that I can be free. Because can you imagine if
I'd rather go to Greg's for a chocolate eclair. That's what the new thing is.
Can you imagine though, if you put if you put that scenario on the people in that article, would they be thinking with that handle in their hand, actually, this parenting thing's quite tough. I'd be free of that if I just let the train.
Yeah. Go. Well, there's just no category for sacrifice
in our society.
Yeah, in any, which is, I mean, and I think that's why we might have gone a podcast without mentioning Jordan B. Peterson, but not anymore.
Saint Jordan.
Saint Jordan. Yeah, but you know, I think that's why when he's kind of saying, "Hang on, what about responsibility?" And actually, let's get people to pick up their responsibility and carry the heaviest thing they can and make the sacrifice they can. Make the sacrifice now for the sake of a better tomorrow. I think that's having traction because you can't deny that that's what a meaningful life is full of. A meaningful life is full of that kind of sacrifice. And even Peterson, who's not coming from a Christian point of view, when he says that, I think people are responding to it.
Even on the most basic level, like away from parenting and the huge sacrifices, but just the basic everyday of you grind away for something, you put in the hard work,
right,
and then something comes. You know,
right.
there's a reward there at the end.
Yeah,
we all understand. You feel like that is more worthwhile than simply just being handed something, don't you?
Yeah.
Which is probably why, as well, we then find it so hard to accept the gospel.
Right.
In some ways, that we feel like we should have. Hang on, what do you mean we just get given this? You know, we do feel we should have grinded our way through the system up the ladder. I don't know. We're tangenting.
Tangentializing. So, we've been thinking about what's new. We've been thinking about what's news. Ian McCarthy says, individualism is incrementally infiltrating, said he on his individual device. So I think Ian's doing a little bit of...
So unless you posted that from your community page... No.
I've lost the power of the English language. What is that when you use the same letter again and again?
Alliteration?
Alliteration,
yes.
That's it.
I do like alliteration.
Yeah, there you go.
It's good.
Individualism is incrementally infiltrating. Yeah, it totally is, but it's got to snap back because at some stage we've got to realise we live in community. And
I do find it fascinating. I mean, I wish I had an opportunity to look into it more. That obviously we've both grown up in individualistic cultures, and of course, yet there are cultures in the world which are not like that at all.
Right.
You know, there's the village, and the good of the community, and it would just be interesting. I think for me, I would find it interesting to go and look at that and just see how things work differently. You know, because it's so difficult for us to pull ourselves out of that mindset, isn't it?
Right.
I guess.
Right. Yeah, and to put others ahead of yourself. Imagine that. Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, let's move on to our thorny question. Our thorny question that we posted up the video last night. It's in the comments of the livecast if you haven't checked it out already. But it is the second of our two-part series on science. First of all, we asked, is faith the enemy of science? And we said no. And then last night we answered the question, is science the enemy of faith? And should we have a look at the first minute or so of that?
Yep, let's try and tee this one up. Here we go. Last week, we saw how science and faith are often pitted against each other.
As for science versus religion, I'm issuing a restraining order. Religion must stay 500 yards from science at all times.
But actually, science and faith are not enemies. They're the best of friends.
Oh, friend! Oh, new friend!
Science tells us loads about mechanisms and matter, whereas faith tells us all about the maker and his meaning. And so we don't have to choose between them. Faith should make us eager to enter the lab with renewed enthusiasm, to keep on researching God's creation.
Fly, my pretties, fly! Continue the research.
This week we're thinking about it from the other side. Science is not the enemy of faith. Science should make us eager to enter church with renewed enthusiasm. Let's explore 4 scientific truths that fit the faith story far more than the atheistic story.
Firstly, the idea that everything came from nothing. Scientists now believe in a cosmic beginning. Call it a Big Bang or some other origin story, but the universe, it seems, had a genesis. Without God, though, a universe coming into existence is pretty far-fetched. I mean, as a Christian, I believe in the virgin birth of Jesus, but this is the virgin birth of the cosmos, and there wasn't even a virgin.
I don't believe it!
It makes far more sense to say that there was a God who brought the universe into being. So there we go.
There we have it.
That's part of the follow-up there. You can check it out, as Glen said, down below.
Down below. So I guess like last week we kind of saw how faith and science are not enemies; they are the best of friends. That really what the opposition is really between naturalism, the philosophy, and faith in Jesus. And those two things are opposed to each other. One of them says that there's nothing beyond chemistry and biology and physics, and the other one says, no, there is a living God who has created the world of the natural. And so those two things are what's kind of in opposition. And then science, well, like science could be done by a believer, science could be done by an atheist. Science is not kind of the thing that's in opposition to faith. It's these two positions. And I guess in this video, we're trying to show really how actually the naturalistic position, if you think that the cosmos is all there is, was, and ever shall be, you're still committed to a whole bunch of miracles, actually. And we go through these sort of 4 miracles that you have to believe in. You have to believe that everything's come from nothing. You have to believe that order has come from chaos, that life has come from non-life, and that consciousness has come from mindless matter. And all of those miracles are orders of magnitude more improbable than anything that the religions of the world have ever come up with. So I love G.K. Chesterton's quote. He said, the whole order of things is more improbable than any miracle that could be said to violate it. So this whole thing, the fact that we've got everything from nothing, order from chaos, life from non-life, and mind from mindless matter, that is just, we're living in a miracle right now. We're absolutely living in a miracle. So don't let a naturalist come to you and say, you faith heads, you're the ones who believe these absurd miracles. Everyone believes in a miracle. So maybe we should go through those 4 and show how they make better sense on the Christian understanding of things rather than the atheistic understanding of things.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked. The first one that was everything. The idea that everything came from nothing, and we talked a bit in the video. Well, you've just seen that clip, weren't you? That was in there about the idea of, as a Christian, you and I, we believe in the virgin birth, but the idea of kind of the universe just popping into existence, it's like the virgin birth of the cosmos, but there isn't even a virgin.
Yes.
That's a real miracle right there.
Wow.
But the thing I thought would be interesting as we talk about these would be to think, what's the non-Christian response to these points? Because as we put these out on the Speak Life page on YouTube, a lot of Christians watch these. I'm sure there are some non-Christians as well, but in a sense, there's an easy audience there who are going to kind of go, "Oh yes, well done."
Yeah, preach to the choir.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah,
yeah. But I said you've obviously you've talked about this kind of thing at various mission weeks and church events over the years. I'm sure you've mentioned these kind of points. It'd be interesting to know what kind of kickback you've got and kickback you've had against it, and when you get that kickback, where'd you go in response to that?
So the everything from nothing thing is, I guess it's kind of like the cosmological argument, if you're going to talk in philosophical terms. So Thomas Aquinas would talk about the very existence of everything out of nothing makes you believe that there is something who could bring about that transition, because it's quite the transition from nothing to everything. I mean, one comeback to that is just to say, well, actually, an eternal cosmos might be an answer. Maybe actually we've been sort of crunching and exploding and crunching and exploding and crunching and exploding infinitely. Maybe the Big Bang that we go back to, you can go before that, and maybe there has been this eternal cosmos and that kind of thing, and certainly before the Big Bang. So going back just 100 years in cosmology and physics, people were very happy to say that the universe is just a brute fact. Cosmos is all there ever has been.
But that idea of the universe just expanding and continually forever and ever, that's purely a faith thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
There's no evidence for that. I mean,
there could be no evidence for it.
Yeah.
But in principle, because you cannot then use.
But surely that means this can't be true then. Because I'm always hearing as a Christian that, of course, the only thing that's worthwhile is this empirical scientific evidence.
Right.
But yet, actually, that kind of thing you've just said would come out of the mouth of a scientist.
Yeah.
Without any scientific empirical evidence at all.
And I guess it goes to show that empirical evidence must be thought through on the basis of these pre-commitments that we've all got. And the pre-commitments are things like, we know what the physical laws of this universe are. We know that they are constant throughout space and constant back through time. And you can only deal with the empirical evidence on the basis of those, you could call them faith commitments, but let's just call them prior commitments. But if we're going back beyond the Big Bang, then we're going into a world in which who knows what the laws of physics are in this other universe. Same goes for the multiverse. We might get into the multiverse in a second when we talk about order from chaos. But when people bring up the multiverse, they're bringing up a universe that is in principle inaccessible to the scientific method.
Right, yeah.
You cannot go and do a measurement for that other universe because that other universe plays by different rules.
Yep.
Right? So the only universe we've got seems to have a beginning. All right? Let's just go with that. The only universe that we're in seems to have a beginning, and therefore it does seem to be logically absurd to believe that everything came from nothing for no reason. That's where I'd come back to.
Yeah, very, very unlikely. Okay, and so the second one was the idea that order came from chaos, and we talk in the video again about, if there's this huge explosion,
right?
This is the first time there's ever been an explosion that's brought incredible order to things.
Right.
We talk about the balance of the universe. If the explosion had banged just that bit quicker, we'd all been flung out into heat death. If it had been a bit less, we'd all been
Come into the mic so that you can.
Sorry, we'd all be
pick up. Yep.
Pulled back in. Crunched back in on ourselves, but we seem to be just the right amount and whatnot.
Yeah.
What do you hear when we talk about this idea? When you say order came from chaos, it seems like a ridiculous notion.
The first thing, I studied this back at university, like last century, for goodness sakes, and I remember kind of studying in philosophy of religion these arguments, and the best kind of comeback is, oh no, there's the anthropic principle, and the anthropic principle is that if I find myself in a universe that is naturally ordered, that I can observe, then it can be the only universe that I would find myself in. So it is no surprise that I find myself in an orderly universe in which I am an observer and I can look around. Just
break that down for those of us. Obviously for the viewers at home.
That's it.
Not for me.
Well, Paul.
Just break that down a little bit for those of us who are not familiar with concepts such as that. Which
I'll set it up in terms of an illustration that will then prejudice how you see the arguments. But I think it's right to then prejudice you.
Okay.
Imagine, so there are all these physical constants. Let's say there are like 30 physical constants, and the numbers have to be just so in order for there to be a life-permitting universe.
Okay.
And one of those constants is the cosmological constant that describes the expansion of the universe. That has to be just so within a range of 1 in 10 to the power 80, which is a 1 over 1 and 80 zeros.
Yep. So very precise.
Quite a big number, I think there's like 10 to the power 60 atoms in the universe. This is a big number, right? And so it has to be just right. So you can imagine that you've got this roulette wheel, and it's got the cosmological constant written on it, and you've got to spin the cosmological constant wheel, and it has to stop just on that one number in a wheel that's got 10 to the power 80 numbers on it.
Yep.
And you think, oh, it did it! Fantastic. Well, but you're not finished. You've got 29 other physical constants, and you got to spin like the force of gravity has to be just so, and the strong and weak nuclear force, the balance between those has to be just so. And you spin these wheels, and there's 30 different ones.
Yep.
And even if you get to the 30th one, and the number is just wrong,
that's it.
There's no you.
Boom, gone.
So imagine that you're there, and you're strapped to a chair, and there are explosives under the chair, and the explosives will go off unless. And viewer, we've got this live.
A worked example.
We've got Semtex under Paul's chair, and imagine it's the case that only if every single one of these 30 wheels gets the right number will you survive. Any other combination, and you won't be there, right? And so the anthropic principle basically comes along.
I don't like these odds.
I don't like these odds.
To be honest.
The anthropic principle says, well, obviously, if it gets to the end, and if you are observing all 30 of those wheels hitting the right number, well then, obviously, that could be the only universe in which you can observe these things.
Right, I see. Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't be here
Otherwise
to
you wouldn't be there.
it.
So there's nothing at all strange.
Just very, 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 very lucky is what they're saying.
Very lucky, but... And of course, like, if you're the guy... or the girl strapped into this chair, and and 30 times, and like your heart leaps, and like I think you'd be thinking, this is rigged, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You'd be like, I've got no hope here.
You wouldn't be thinking, oh, well, I guess it makes sense that I'm still alive, because if I wasn't still alive, I wouldn't be wondering at the odds of things.
Yeah, it's a strange
thing to think.
Yes, that is a strange.
You know, and it completely relies on the fact that you believe that there must be like an almost infinite number of such scenarios that are out there. You know, as though that this experiment must have happened trillions of times around the world, and you just happen to be the lucky one.
I see. So the assumption is that, you know, it's just been happening, and at least once we got lucky. But of course, once again, that's just a claim that's got no empirical evidence for. It's just that's a faith claim again.
Exactly.
I often admire the faith of these people.
I know.
You know?
I know. Well, you have to. We live in a miraculous universe.
Yep.
You've got to have faith in something, right? And we're just saying, well, what if there's a God who actually wants us? You know, maybe that's why the universe is rigged. Maybe it's rigged. You know, which seems to be the most
the order of the day.
Yeah, I think it's probably rigged. So that's the order coming from chaos.
Okay.
Thing.
Great. Okay, and then thirdly, we had the idea that life came from non-life, and then we talked about how do you actually get from inorganic matter to life and organic matter, and actually we say about, despite all our money and resources and science, we can't actually replicate this in the lab at all.
And we can't even replicate it like mathematically and with computer modeling, which is like so. That just goes to show how really, really, really difficult it is. And some people might point to certain kind of experiments where like prebiotic chemicals, you know, turned into organic chemistry and that kind of stuff. But they're not talking about like creating life in the lab. We can't create life in the lab when we're trying.
Isn't it amazing? This is a real tangent. I was going to say, isn't it amazing that they would look at something? There'll be people who would look at that and go, "Look, life," but yet, but yet.
Yeah.
A fetus in the womb.
Yeah. Nah. Clump of cells.
Yeah.
That's
so
a
that
clump
was
of
a
cells.
Kind of throw the grenade and run moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Let's not go down that road.
They're all linked. I think it is all linked. But
yeah,
linked.
no, but it's the whole people say about, you know, life on Mars. You know, they'll find a cell of, and one day they'll be like life, but yet in the womb. No, that's not life.
Well, Richard Dawkins spoke about the the tyranny of the discontinuous mind. And what he meant was, he said that biology has taught us that we are all on a continuum. And so I'm on a continuum with chimpanzees, and you go back to lobsters, you know, Jordan B. Peterson, you know, and all the way back. And we're all on this continuum. And so it's you know, it's always arbitrary to draw a line and say that's life and it deserves our protection, right?
Right, yeah, I see.
And so actually his biology, his atheistic biology, was informing his, and then he brought it into the pro-life kind of argument and said, well, it's just arbitrary to say that that's a life and that's not a life, and it's the tyranny of the discontinuous mind.
How far can you? I mean, again, I'm pushing into areas I've not talked about before. I don't know. I mean, how far do you push that though? I mean, what do you start saying is this bacteria is You know, what right do you have to wipe out this bacteria from your body with your penicillin?
Exactly.
Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's getting into the realms of the ludicrous, but
that would be to treat everything as sacred all the way back to the bacteria, or you just treat everything as just conditional, and only once the kid has, you know, graduated college and can hold down a job, you know, then it's got rights, you know,
once it can contribute to society,
then
and therefore until then. And there's plenty of adults who wouldn't qualify. You know?
Which goes to show the discontinuous mind is actually what gives us human rights. The continuous mind is that everything is a dimmer switch, and some things are a bit brighter and some things are a bit murkier. But human rights depends on there being an on or an off. Okay, you're a human being, and I don't care how disabled you are. You deserve protection and provision under the law. Right? Sure. That's what human rights depends on. If you've got the dimmer switch, you're like, well, you're kind of a human being in one sense, but in another sense, you're actually, you know, more like the chimpanzee, and so I'm not sure. And everything is on the dimmer switch.
And that's where you get, is it Singer? People like Peter Singer. Is it Peter Singer?
Yeah.
Singer? Who would say things that, you know, as a Christian, most atheists and everyone recall, just go, oh my goodness me, this is horrific, but consistent with their worldview.
Absolutely.
And actually, there's a lot that is not consistent.
Yeah, and so on the life from non-life thing, I do think everyone's got miracles. It's just that Christians have the far more believable miracles. So on everything from nothing, we believe in the virgin birth of Jesus, right? But at least there's a virgin. At least there's a God to bring about that miracle. We believe in order coming from chaos, in that we believe Jesus actually went around planet Earth and he brought order out of chaos, and he brought healing to people, and he calmed the storm, and he kind of shepherded this world to the way it should be. But we believe in a miracle maker who can do that. Yeah. You come away from that and you believe in order from chaos, which is like on a cosmic level, these miracles. And then thirdly, life from non-life. Yeah, I believe that the non-living Jesus on Easter Sunday came to life again. Miracle, sure. But step away from this story and go to the atheistic story, and they believe that life has come from all life has stepped out of the tomb, and sprung up, and without a God to do it.
It's good, yeah. I mean, and that's, I think, actually calling it the tomb. That's a strong. That's a vivid analogy.
It's life from the dead.
Life from the dead.
And that's important about all these arguments about, because we're making these arguments that you might think they could be made by a theist, a general theist who just believes in the omni-being of Greek philosophy. They can make these arguments too. I don't think that's true, actually. I think we're talking about Easter miracles. Each and every one of these is an Easter miracle. Everything from nothing is a kind of a life from the dead miracle. Order from chaos is a life from the dead miracle. Life coming from non-life is a life from the dead kind of a miracle. We're talking about a specific God who can do these miracles, and I think it's the God of Easter. So,
man. And then
home stretch.
Number 4, minds came from mindless matter.
Yeah.
So we talk about this with the quote, which is a great one from David Chalmers, saying, "How does the water of the brain turn into the wine of consciousness?"
Right.
So what do we say about that one there?
Yeah, and I think this is the hardest one of them all, and the more we're learning about it, the more difficult the hard problem of consciousness is. And actually, it turns people like Thomas Nagel, who was a naturalist, who's saying, look, I just think naturalism is not really tenable anymore. How on earth does this 2 pounds of grey matter actually process the mysteries of the universe and have an experience of the universe that is not the same as the brain chemistry that's fizzing? I can do a brain scan that talks about synapses firing, but that is very different to my experience of a yellow tulip. The brain scan and the experience of the yellow tulip are just it's water and wine. It's water and wine. But we know a guy who could turn water into wine. So it's kind of, and we believe that God has made us for rational encounter, for a mind-to-mind, face-to-face relationship, and so it is therefore. It's a miracle. Consciousness is a miracle that I am me and I can process the world like I do.
What do you get people saying in response to that? The person who just doesn't really, who just wants to come back at it. Do you get much coming back on that one? Sometimes
they say, well, okay, somebody like Daniel Dennett, a philosopher of mind, he thinks that consciousness is just brain chemistry at just a higher level, and it's just such a complex machine that's going on that as an epiphenomenon gives us a sense of consciousness, and we just don't know enough to say it's God. And then the atheist sort of says, this is just a God of the gaps argument, Glen. You're saying you don't know how brain chemistry leads to consciousness, and so you're just saying God, which is not the way that I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when you begin with a God who is a Father, Son, and Spirit who are in relationship with one another, in which personal consciousness is supreme. When you begin with that then makes sense of a world in which we are conscious beings. I'm not trying to argue from brain chemistry up towards a God of the gaps.
Yeah, other way around.
It's the other way around. It's the God coming down kind of thing. But yeah, so a lot of people want to say that it is in principle solvable. That even though now we don't know how brain chemistry could lead to consciousness, that's just the bold new frontier of science, and one day we will figure out a totally naturalistic explanation for consciousness. Now,
it's
notice
good that people believe that with no evidence. No.
Boom! Exactly. It's a faith position. And isn't it a scientism of the gaps, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it a scientism of the gaps?
Yeah, that's
there's a gap,
right.
And I'm sure naturalistic science will. But people,
But you've got nothing to back that up at all. Yes. Yeah, it's exactly the same.
well,
isn't
what
it?
they'll say is, science has, a good track record of solving problems. And look at the last 300 years, and we've solved a lot of problems, and we're going to solve a lot more. And the onward march of science will dispel the mythologies of Christian dogma.
Because we only can progress.
We only, right.
That's all there can be, obviously.
Yeah.
We never take a backward step.
Never take a backward step, and it's always onwards and upwards, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. So there's all sorts of faith commitments there, aren't there? All sorts of faith commitments.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots to chew on, but it's we've almost done an hour.
It'd be good to hear from in the comment. I don't know if there are any comments, but it's the kind of thing I'd love to hear from scientists who are Christians.
Yeah.
As to what their experience of some of these. I wonder whether these conversations go on in the lab. At any point.
Yeah.
Or over lunch in the lab. Probably not in the lab. It's probably a health and safety.
What's this vial?
Yeah.
Oops.
But I'd be interested to know what things Christians who are scientists hear from other scientists when these kind of conversations do arise, if they do.
Yeah.
Just to know what's it look like on the ground, particularly, and not just, when you go to a university maybe and you get someone talking back to you about it. I mean, there's still students of it, where it'd be nice to know what some of the really established people in their fields are saying in the workplaces. And
I imagine it's a bit like, because a lot of this is not so much about physics, it's about metaphysics. So it's kind of what we're talking about is a philosophy of science, which I'm sure like day to day when you're just in the lab doing stuff,
doesn't come up.
You just get on with it,
Right, yeah,
it's like does a
Bunsen burner on?
Yeah, exactly. Does a footballer have a philosophy of football every morning and wrestling through a sausage maker is constantly thinking, but does it really work? Why does the sausage meat work? I don't know. So maybe
we'd have better sausages if people did that.
Think it through, people.
Yeah.
Think it through, you butchers. You butchers. And I mean that with love. Good. Should we call that a day before we say anything else too stupid? That was our livecast for today. And in the comments section of Facebook, you'll have all our links to things like the BBC articles, like the Unbelievable podcast, like the Thorny Question. We'd love to hear what you think. So do like us on Facebook and on Facebook, at the top, you can click on the friends thing or the subscribe thing and you can say see first. Yeah, see first, and then you'll see our stuff first, because otherwise Facebook just buries all our stuff.
Facebook's bizarre algorithms that doesn't show you what you want to see, basically.
Yeah, so maybe do that. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much. Why don't you give that a share? Make sure you're subscribed on there. And do check us out on Facebook or on YouTube, and then you can see this loveliness that I'm pointing to right now. And you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what you're missing.
This miraculous faces of creation right here.
There's the fifth proof for God's existence. Right there.
Or at least for a fallen world.
That's it. There has been a fall. Proof positive. Brilliant. And next week on our Thorny Questions, we're going to be thinking about other faiths.
Yeah.
So we'll start another little mini-series.
Going to be a good one. Good to think about that. Obviously a hot topic all the time. Always comes up, that kind of stuff. What about other religions? Yep.
And we'll have a go at that one. But until then, are you ready with the stop button?
Yep. I can hover. Look at that.
We need an outro song. Livecast. Bye-bye from my livecast. Anyway, I've just got a cramp. You better
We better
stop.
go. Glen needs medical assistance.
Must
Take care, everyone. See ya.
See you later. Bye.